Folks, we're going to have a little bit of an extra credit opportunity here at the end of the third quarter. You're going to have a quiz on the most missed questions from the Unit 9 exam. The requirement will be that you watch this video and review the 10 most missed questions before you actually take the little quiz in class. So here we go. Please ignore the question numbers because these are different based on which version of the exam you actually had. But the top 10 missed questions happen to be the same questions on all three versions of the exam. So let's start here with this excerpt from Woodrow Wilson's 14-point speech. We entered this war because violations of right had occurred which touched us to the quick and made the life of our own people impossible unless they were corrected and the world secure once for all against their recurrence. What we demand in this war, therefore, is nothing peculiar to ourselves. It is that the world be made fit and safe to live in, and particularly that it be made safe for every peace-loving nation which, like our own, wishes to live its own life, determine its own institutions, be assured of justice and fair dealing by the other peoples of the world as against force and selfish aggression. All the peoples of the world are in effect partners in this interest, and for our own part we see very clearly that unless justice be done to others, it will not be done to us. The program of the world's peace, therefore, is our program. So this first question from this stimulus set, this challenged which prevailing norm, and that's American foreign policy as established by the Monroe Doctrine. If you remember, the Monroe Doctrine basically said that Europeans need to stay out of American affairs, and that the Western Hemisphere, or the Americas, Latin America, are the realm of the United States. Europeans should stay out. The United States will stay out of European affairs. Likewise, all right. So this is clearly a challenge to the Monroe Doctrine because it's suggesting that the United States play a significant role in establishing peace around the world, not just its own sphere of influence as laid out by the Monroe Doctrine. If we take a look at the next question, what group would most likely support the sentiments in the excerpts? That would be anti-imperialists. Anti-imperialists were opposed to U.S. intervention for the sake of imperialism, but the case here, especially the line about making the world safe for peace-loving nations to live their own lives and determine their own institutions, is in line with what anti-imperialists were fighting for in the first place. And then the third question on this set, what was the direct result of the sentiments represented in the excerpt? And the direct result is really that the League of Nations, or the Treaty of Versailles and the League of Nations, were rejected by the Senate because Republican senators were afraid that joining the League of Nations would ultimately result in the Constitution losing some standing, as the United States would give up sovereignty to an international organization. The fourth question that was missed at a high rate, still on the topic of Woodrow Wilson. So Woodrow Wilson's use of phrasing such as, quote, the world must be made safe for democracy, unquote, best echoed the sentiments of, well, the correct answer, internationalism. Right? So the United States is going to engage in international affairs to try to make the world safe for democracy. This is in direct opposition to Washington's farewell address, which said we should just completely stay out of European affairs. It's in opposition to the Monroe Doctrine, which says we'll stay in our own sphere of influence of the Americas. And as far as Manifest Destiny goes, Manifest Destiny is not really the topic here. I mean, we could tie it indirectly to imperialism, and then make the connection to internationalism. But really, internationalism and imperialism or on the continental level, which is Manifest Destiny, are two different things. All right, moving on to this image of Theodore Roosevelt and the Rough Riders. And the question being, a historian might use this image to support the point of view that the correct answer, D, innovations in communication and technology contributed to a growth of mass culture. So this is a famous image. This is published in magazines and newspapers. And this type of artwork at the time was used to kind of share news globally. So news would spread, and people started publishing pieces of art like this and then buying pieces of art. So really, it's having an impact on mass culture as people are starting to buy these pieces of art, aside just from what they're seeing in publications. And another example, if you go to Fredericksburg today and you go into like basically every other store has some type of Civil War theme, and they sell a lot of paintings of Civil War battle scenes and Civil War leaders. It's a similar trend as what you see here in this photograph of this drawing of the Rough Riders. The next question, how did progressive Democrats in the South seek to solve the problems of racial strife? And what they did was pass Jim Crow laws. So they were legislating segregation. They certainly were not advocating for equal justice or equal access to education. They weren't seeking to dismantle Jim Crow laws. The legislation that they were passing to build the system of segregation was the attempt to silence black voters and basically rewind to a time when social processes or the way people act in public spaces were similar to a time when the system of slavery existed. All right, moving on to the next question. W.E.B. Du Bois, founder of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, broke with his former mentor, Booker T. Washington, because Du Bois believed that Washington was not bold enough. Du Bois was really advocating and writing in support of establishment of equal rights. And Washington was more so focused on helping African Americans be supportive in the economy through education, through jobs programs, etc., but was not pushing for full equality in citizenship or voting rights. So it was kind of working within the system that existed. And then the last set of questions, you have an excerpt from the Plessy v. Ferguson ruling. But in the view of the Constitution, in the eye of the law, there is in this country no superior, dominant ruling class of citizens. There is no caste here. Our Constitution is colorblind and neither knows nor tolerates classes among citizens. In respect of civil rights, all citizens are equal before the law, the humblest in the peer of the most powerful. The law regards man as man and takes no account of his surroundings or of his color when his civil rights, as guaranteed by the supreme law of the land, are involved. The arbitrary separation of citizens on the basis of race while they are on a public highway is a bondage of servitude wholly inconsistent with the civil freedom and the equality before the law established by the Constitution. It cannot be justified upon any legal grounds. All right, so this is from the dissenting opinion. This is not the majority opinion. As you know, the majority opinion of the court upheld segregation and established the separate but equal doctrine. But this is an important dissenting opinion, because this is going to come back as an issue during Brown v. Board, and this dissenting opinion was very much relied upon by the Marshall Court in the Brown v. Board case. So the first question here: which of the following contradicted the sentiments of the excerpt? That is the passage of Jim Crow legislation. I mean, if the excerpt is saying there should not be segregation, therefore, it is the passage of Jim Crow laws, which are just legal segregation laws, are contradicting Harlan's opinion here. The next question: what was the direct result of the majority decision in the case mentioned in the excerpt? That would be the expansion of state segregation laws. Plessy versus Ferguson constitutionalized or made constitutional all segregation of public spaces. And then the third question: the excerpt was written in response to challenges to the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. The 14th Amendment guarantees due process of law and equal protection under the law. So the excerpt is written in response to the argument that's being made in Plessy versus Ferguson that separate... Sorry, my dryer was going off. Equality is not necessarily having access to the same resources. There can be separate resources. They just have to be fairly equal. Now, we know in reality that separate but equal did not yield actual equal facilities that were separated by race. Facilities for African Americans were, in most cases, inferior in quality to the resources that were made available for whites. All right, so that is the conclusion of the 10 most missed questions on the Unit 9 exam. Please take some time to review this content, and you will have an opportunity to take an assessment on these 10 questions and get some extra credit points for the third quarter. Thanks for listening.